Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Eurogamer newscast. And this week, I'm being joined, as ever, by our trusty news reporting team of Ed Nightingale.
Hello.
Victoria Kennedy.
Hello.
And Ishrak Subhan.
Hello.
And I'm Tom Phillips, and this week we're talking about, well, a couple of things. Hitting the headlines this week has been the news that both Microsoft and Sony are investigating ways to put advertising in free-to-play games. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get to the certain point in a game and have an ad break like you might on Twitch or on ITV, but it is happening in some form or other. They are investigating it, and we're going to talk a bit about advertising in games, how good / very, very bad it has been in the past, and what these companies might be looking to do in the future. And then also this week we're celebrating another return. We've had Monkey Island and other things coming back. Now it's seemingly Amy Hennig's Star Wars dreams and the revival of her coming back to Star Wars to do a new cinematic adventure in a galaxy far, far away. We're talking a bit about that later on as well. But yeah, on to the in-game advertising, which I think everyone has sort of seen and not been a huge fan of. We first got a report of this last week with Microsoft suggesting that it would consider adding ads to free-to-play games. It said that it wasn't interested in collecting a cut of the ad revenue. So this isn't, for Microsoft at least, a company which has a few quid to rub together already, and not a money-making exercise, but a way to open up free-to-play games to this kind of monetization, which could encourage more developers. And when you're looking at the kind of games that go on Game Pass, there's certainly quite a few games that might qualify. So they did say that it was something they were moving cautiously on. They intend to create a private marketplace where select brands can insert ads into games in a way that doesn't disrupt the gameplay experience. So we're not talking about, as we were saying, like an ad break in a free-to-play game, but we are talking about things that are not there now, which are promotions, which are there to sell stuff to you. And, the initial reaction is that this stuff could be quite jarring. Ed, let's kick off with you. What was your sort of reaction to reading this news, and where do you think that Microsoft might be going with it?
I think from a player point of view, the bottom line is nobody wants advertising in games. Like, it's jarring, it's intrusive, it ruins the experience. It's just not something that I think players in general want to see. There are, I guess, business decisions around it, and I guess that kind of makes sense. I mean, you say Microsoft don't want to make money from it necessarily. I'm sure they've got other ideas. It is also, or could potentially be, a money-making exercise. If you've got a free-to-play game, you need to find ways of making money, and ad revenue makes sense to that. So I can see the business decisions. I think ultimately it's a question of relevancy for me, in terms of relevancy to the game and relevancy to the player. So is this an advert that makes sense in the game world? If it's a sports game and it's a banner somewhere, that to me kind of makes sense. If it's, I don't know, some fantasy battle royale and then there's like a Coke ad in the middle of it, I'm like, no, that obviously doesn't make sense in the game world. So that's going to be jarring. So I really question how relevant and how smooth these things can be added in. The other side of that is then how relevant is it to the player? And I'm presuming these aren't going to be, your personalized ads that you get through cookies on the internet. This is going to be them partnering with a specific company or whatever else. And how relevant is that going to be to me as a player? Because if it's something I'm actually interested in, then maybe I don't mind it. If it's something that I have no interest in and makes no sense in the context of this game, why is it there? So I think that's a really, really tricky balance to get. And I can understand why Microsoft say they're being cautious about it, because there's going to be a lot of trepidation about this, I think.
I think that's right. Yeah, there is going to be an awful lot of skepticism that this is a thing that can work. And we don't know exactly how it will work, and it seems like these things are still very much in the planning stages, and so Microsoft may not entirely know how it works either. But definitely the sense, the feeling out there right now is of caution exactly how this will work and whether it's it's a bit of a watershed moment, because this isn't something that we typically see in console games, at least. Obviously, mobile games have a lot of advertising, and they are predominantly free-to-play experiences, but not something that we would see on a console. Victoria, I don't actually know if you play many free-to-play games yourself. I'm just trying to think. But
I
don't
generally know. Again, I play them on mobile, but
yeah, it would be jarring to see this stuff sort of flash up on your telly screen, right? How would you be looking for these things to appear? Do you think to make them not appear completely obtrusive?
Kind of, well, similar to what Ed said. Like, as long as it. Okay, I'm not saying that I'm for advertising in games, but if I've got a free-to-play game and there's like some product placement in it, if it makes sense, that wouldn't really bother me that much. So like if we were, playing a video game and so let's just say we were playing a video game set in the here and now and there was a bottle of Coke on the desktop for the background or something, that wouldn't really faze me that much. And I also I don't think I'd be that inspired to buy Coke from that. But anyway. But yeah, like as Ed said, if it was something like, a really sort of like sweaty dwarf suddenly cooling off with a refreshing spritz of cola, then yes, that would be a little bit weird. So I think it's not so much what they're doing for me, it's how they're going to do it.
Yes, and how this is going to be vetted, I suppose, by the platform holders.
And obviously, like, I know we've mentioned briefly in a chat before this, like, the game that you're playing also has to make sure the advertising is appropriate for all people who would be playing that. So I would be very annoyed as a mother if my son was playing a game that was suitable for his age group that then suddenly started advertising like Budweiser.
Yes, or if, say, your son was playing Roblox and suddenly there was an advert on screen for a Kim Kardashian thing, as we saw earlier this week.
Yes, I would not.
I'm not sure if that counts as product placement.
Maybe Roblox were in on it and it was all just some advertising for them. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, no, I wouldn't want that sort of thing popping up on any game. But yeah, so like I said, it's more to do with what the product is, how the product's being placed, because I would hate to have a game like The Last of Us, where it's all set in this like dystopian future, then suddenly having this really brand flashy new ad that's clearly not been weathered by the decay of time and situation. Like that wouldn't be good.
Yeah, you mentioned The Last of Us, and it's an interesting one because we'll just go into this in a sec, but Sony is considering this stuff too, and they have said in the past, haven't they, that their big push for the next 5 years is going to be these big live service games. And if some of them are free to play, potentially we could be talking about not AAA full price games, but potentially franchises which have historically been AAA full price games being part of this initiative if they are free to play, spin-offs down the line.
But I wouldn't be bothered kind of going back to like Alan Wake was in the sort of Xbox 360 days. Like it didn't really bother me that the batteries I were picking up were branded batteries because he needed batteries. So like that didn't, well, I mean, also I maybe wasn't looking at it as a sort of journalist at that point, but that didn't really bother me in the gameplay. So if there was something in The Last of Us that made sense to be there in the free-to-play game, hypothetically, I don't think that would affect my gameplay experience personally.
Yeah, and I remember playing Super Monkey Ball back on the GameCube, and the first two games in that franchise had the Dole sticker over their bananas that you went around collecting, and that was pretty unobtrusive. Theme Hospital had the old Kit Kat vending machines. I remember speaking to the team. They're now making 2 Point games, 2 Point Campus, 2 Point Hospital, and they actually said they never formally got branding approval for that Kit Kat machine. They sort of made it, put it in, and then said, "Oh," they sent off a letter saying, "If you would like us not to do this, just let us know by this date." And then the game went off. In those days, once it was on a CD, that was it. It was done. So, and they just very quietly continued. But sadly, there are not Kit Kat vending machines in 2 Point Hospital. Anyway, yeah, it will be interesting how these things are implemented. Sony, we should say this week, has said that it is investigating exactly the same thing, and we should also say both of these reports come from Business Insider, based on sources familiar with both Microsoft and Sony's plans. But one thing that stood out to me on this report about Sony specifically was that they have, or they are apparently planning rewards such as, free in-game skins, cosmetic items for people who do choose to actively engage with an advert. And that to me suggests that it will be more than just sort of a passive product placement, and that it might be more like, as you would see in a mobile game, you can get some more lives, some more energy by opting in to view an ad, and then you get the reward after that.
See, I would be against that because that feels more like manipulation.
Yeah, Ishrak, do you think that console gamers could get used to that kind of implementation that we've sort of seen in mobile games? If they continue to get stuff from it, get gameplay, get rewards in a free-to-play game, is that something that you think may end up being the norm?
See, I don't know. My initial reaction was that actually what we're going to get is those sort of mechanics from mobile gaming. And I feel like initially there will be a pushback, but there was initial pushback against free-to-play multiplayer games where you have battle passes or in-game transactions. And now it's sort of the norm, isn't it? We just sort of accept that's part of our gaming universe. So I think as long as there's high quality games that do somehow implement them, and not just tacky games that you might see on a mobile app store, it's possible that gamers might actually just disgruntledly just accept it and use it, and we'll be speaking in 5 years and say, yep, that's completely normal. It's just part of the entire gaming ecosystem.
Do you think you've played Call of Duty Warzone? Do you think that is something that... So there are definitely developers who are making sort of smaller budget free-to-play titles. Do you think this is something that bigger publishers like Activision might consider, or do you think that actually they might think this is not something that we want to get in front of because we're too much of a premium experience?
It's interesting reading the Sony and Microsoft articles that it was like they were trying to encourage more free-to-play games, and I assume from smaller developers. But I think knowing the bigger publishers, if there's an opportunity to make more money, they're not going to say no to it. So if Microsoft and Sony does give them the option to insert ads or advertising into the game, they'll absolutely do it some way. And you know what? I mean, they do it anyway. Like we saw in 420, you had the Snoop Dogg pack in Call of Duty. I mean, we have all sorts of product placement. I mean, we have Godzilla and King Kong rumored to be coming, though it's definitely going to come out by the time this is out. So it's already been done. I don't see why they wouldn't expand to having more advertising inside their games.
Yeah, when Free Guy, the recent film, came out in Fortnite, there was a collaboration, and there's collaborations every day in Fortnite with something or other. And, they tested, because Ryan Reynolds plays this character in Free Guy. Is it Free Guy? Yeah, where he's basically an avatar in a video game, and so they had little live action clips of Ryan Reynolds saying little silly things as you did stuff in the game, and he would pop up, and it was like a pop-up ad, but it was also sort of part of the game in that you could buy his skin, and he was setting you these challenges, and he would become part of the Fortnite metaverse. But that to me, I look at something like that, and I think what Call of Duty does with the way that it successfully monetizes stuff too and puts stuff in its shop. I just think, I don't know if you will go down this route because you are already successfully monetizing your game in different ways. But for a small free-to-play game who doesn't have those avenues, who can't rely on Godzilla or Ryan Reynolds, maybe this is Microsoft and Sony's answer to those. Especially,
I do think.
Sorry, Ed, you go.
I do think, as Ishrak said, maybe this is something we might end up getting used to in the future. I think there is a precedence for this in mobile gaming, which we've mentioned a lot already. There have been adverts in mobile games for a very long time, and a lot of them are very intrusive, in the sense of, watch this ad for 2 minutes to get some extra energy or something and that's really intrusive, but that's sort of become the norm in mobile gaming. Now, that's not necessarily something that's going to immediately transfer across to console gaming. That, as you said, I think would be very jarring to see on a big screen all of a sudden. But if it's something that people have got used to in mobile gaming, maybe we'll just have to suck it up. Maybe publishers are just gonna hammer this through, and it's something we're just gonna have to get used to. And gamers won't want to do that, but maybe we won't even have much choice.
Could you see platform holders or even the developers themselves coming up with almost like an altruistic message for people engaging with these ads? Like, it supports the developer if you watch this ad. And I'm kind of thinking, like, you see this stuff on places like Twitch. Please watch this ad. Please stick around. Don't just quit because you're supporting the streamer by staying. And I'm just thinking, if we're talking about small developers, indie developers here, and game budgets are increasing, competition, there's tons of it, especially in the free-to-play space. Do you see that, or could you be convinced yourself to stick around and watch something for the good of the people who made it?
Does that ever work? Do people really care?
I mean, like,
care.
you stream on Twitch. I mean, so
Yeah.
I watch
obviously do
adverts for
stick
you,
around.
Ed.
And people watch.
I got your
I
back.
stick for the ads for you, Ed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
We're better people than you.
Well, I guess the flip side of all that is, do we then end up with a paid version without ads? So then it's like, well, if you want to avoid this because this is annoying to you, then here's a paid version instead. And do we then end up with different tiers of things?
Well, that's what they do on
to use the
YouTube.
Twitch example, you've got, you subscribe to a channel and then you don't get the ads, and the streamer gets that money directly. So do you end up with that kind of model going forwards?
I don't see why not. In mobile games, there is usually an option to buy an ad-free or premium version for £4 or whatever, and it just gets rid of the ad. So I can't see why you wouldn't have an equivalent for console games if this ever comes.
At which point, why have a free-to-play game?
For the advertising.
Because then it's no longer free-to-play.
You've got to get the people in somehow. People aren't used to paying for games, free-to-play games.
Or anything.
All of this suggests that we should all subscribe to Ed on Twitch so we don't have to watch adverts on there anymore.
Don't watch it. But also, thinking as well of like PS Plus or even Game Pass, will free-to-play games come to that? And then if it's a case of, well, I've paid my subscription, I'm paying money already, so I'm guessing those games wouldn't be added to that subscription.
Unless they were the paid versions which got added. So, say Fortnite for some reason did this ad thing, then, Fortnite Premium no ad version might go in Game Pass, whereas free-to-play Fortnite would remain free. You wouldn't need a subscription for it, but you would also get ads.
Well, for PS Plus, I know they give out free skins for both Warzone and Fortnite every once in a while, just for being a subscriber for the game, so they could just continue to do that with other free-to-play games.
It's interesting. Well, maybe we'll be back here in 5 years' time saying, do you remember when there was all that kerfuffle about Microsoft and Sony doing this, and now it's just absolutely part of the norm?
We love advertising.
Yeah.
Okay,
remember when people were worried about NFTs and now they're just part of our daily lives?
No.
Don't.
That's too far.
How easily sort of like, seduced is maybe the wrong word, but it's what I've got. How easily seduced are you by advertising? Like, if you were to see your hero fish sticks having a Coke, would you be like, yes, fish sticks, I like your style?
I might think I'm a little bit thirsty. I wonder what's in the fridge, but I wouldn't go out and buy a bottle of Coke.
Yeah. It's like that. Like, oh, I fancy some food right now, or maybe a drink. But for a specific brand, I don't know.
Yeah.
Hard
Don't
pass
know.
from Ed.
What about you, Victoria?
Yeah, I mean,
Are you swayed by advertising?
I'm swayed. I'm dangerous if I go into a supermarket because I'm very much like, oh, pretty packaging and it's on an offer. I'm swayed by that. So for the health and safety of my bank account, I have to do all my shopping online. because I definitely like get drawn in by packaging.
See, I'm often swayed by Instagram ads when I'm tapping through and you see something that you're like, oh, that actually looks really interesting. But that's because that's targeted to me. So it's based on who do I follow, what might I be interested in, like, oh, here's, I don't know, a new clothing brand or whatever it might be. And it's something I don't know about. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I'll click on that. But that's what I guess this isn't going to be, because it's not targeted to me. It's who Sony or the developer, whoever else wants to partner with and chooses to. That might not be relevant to me. So therefore, I'm not going to be interested in that.
Well,
But if they make it relevant to the game, then they might be like by default become relevant to you. So like, you know, if there was something.
Well, that's the thing. It depends what's being advertised, really.
Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say is Microsoft has their own ad system, and I don't see why they couldn't integrate with Facebook or whatever. I mean, games gather a lot of data as it is, but that's a fact. They know all sorts of statistics. I can't see why they couldn't use the identifier for you and link it to your, I don't know, Instagram mechanic and say, oh, well, this is Ed, and Ed likes, I don't know what you like, Ed, and stick it into the game. I think it's very technically possible.
True, but then are we going to get cookie pop-ups on games?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you already accept terms and conditions anyway in any game you open, so it could be in that.
Yeah.
I think if you're a gamer, and I hate to use that term, but if you are a gamer and you play a free-to-play game, then you are sort of already pigeonholed in terms of what adverts you're likely to have served up to you, because it says something about you that, you know. It reminds me of whenever there was like a trade show at the NEC and we'd be going up there for that, and you would know immediately everyone got out of the train station and there would be people who were quite clearly going to a game show, and then there were people quite clearly going to the real home show next door with Lawrence Llewellyn and Bowen. And it's like, yeah, you don't need signs to work out which direction these people are going to turn at the end of the staircase. And it's like, yes, that's your audience for games. And yeah.
I suppose that we've had video game characters advertising things. I mean, we've had Lara Croft for Lucasade and Nathan Drake did Subway. So it's coming full circle and it's back on the other way around now.
Very true.
Scary thought. Well, let's leave that there. But yeah, we'll also revisit that in 5 years and see where we've landed. Speaking of in 5 years' time, after that point, we will definitely have had quite a few more Star Wars games, because after a bit of a drought, I would say, in the last console generation, where big console games for Star Wars were locked to EA, Lucasfilm seems to be handing out the license for Star Wars left, right, and center. And we were having a count earlier on about how many Star Wars games are in development right now, and it's at least half a dozen. There are 3 just at Respawn alone. And this week we got the announcement of a new project from Amy Hennig. Victoria, you're a devotee of Amy Hennig and her work back at Naughty Dog. Why is this such an interesting announcement to see her doing Star Wars again?
I mean, I'm happy for her because obviously she left Naughty Dog under some unknown situation, which we will never really get clarified probably. And so for her to then like move on to her next big thing, which then got canned. So I'm happy for Amy, definitely. Like, it's nice that she's having a sort of second chance at what she wanted to do after her sort of big Uncharted departure. So, I mean, I'm quite lucky because I'm a Star Wars fan and clearly an Amy Hennig fan, so this is a nice little marriage for me. So I'm excited about it. I think it'll be good. And
yeah,
like
you actually wrote. Sorry, I was going to say, like, you actually wrote a story this week about Amy Hennig's departure, which was very well timed. That it was discussed, and we didn't get the full story, but we got a few more details, right? And it does seem like she departed Naughty Dog in unusual circumstances.
Yeah. I don't know if Nolan North let slip more than he meant to when he said that she was dismissed, but it certainly sounded like it wasn't her decision to be moving on, especially if she was 7 months into making Uncharted 4. But, yeah.
And then after all of that work went away, obviously she spent years on Ragtag at Visceral, and then all of that work went away too when EA shut down.
Yeah, that must have been a
Visceral.
very demoralizing time for her. I mean, again, I have no idea what Amy Hennig thinks or does in her free time, but I can't imagine it being, a particularly optimistic time if you've just had two big things pretty much that you've been working, I don't know, I imagine very hard on, just to be completely sort of swept under the rug and moved on from. So I'm very excited that she is getting this chance to, return to the glory of what she was doing.
Yeah.
Do we know if this is literally a revival of that project, or is it just a case of there might be some similarities there because it's her?
I assume she must have some ideas left over that she'd like.
We don't know for sure. It's an interesting one because any work that she did at Visceral, she was part of EA at that point, and that stuff is probably still owned by EA. And Amy Hennig now works at her own studio that she co-founded, Skydance New Media, and so I don't think it would be a carbon copy, but similar themes possibly. The rumors suggest that it's in the classic trilogy era, as Project Ragtag was, and it's also fascinating as well because everything that is made now in the world of the universe of Star Wars has to be vetted by Lucasfilm as canon. So yeah, I don't know to what extent Ragtag would have been part of that before, but yeah, we'll have to see. There's a whole array of other projects in development though. Does anyone have one in particular that they're looking forward to? Like, so there's Jedi Order 2, there's Ubisoft's game, which is being made by the people who did The Division. And there's fan speculation that they could be doing a Mando game. It would be very similar to that sort of gameplay loop of going out, completing missions, coming back to base, upgrading, rewarding, maybe with new bits of your armor, who knows. And then there's also the Quantic Dream game as well, from the people who made Heavy Rain, Star Wars Eclipse. Yeah. Ishrak, any of those take your fancy? Or anyone you're not looking forward to?
I'm excited for all of them. I mean, we don't know much about any of those games really, so it's hard to really say how they're going to come up. But I am excited about the sheer breadth of games from a number of different studios. It means that at least one of them will be good, at least. Whereas when EA had the license last generation, we had two Battlefront games, and one of them was okay, and the other one had a massive controversy over loot boxes. So I'm just excited that we'll have so many different takes on the Star Wars franchise. If I had to pick one, probably the Respawn one. I mean, Respawn Titanfall was amazing, and the team there are extremely talented. So, and they're making 3 games. So, I'm a first-person shooter guy, so that Star Wars shooter looks potentially quite exciting. But we'll have to see.
Ed, anyone in particular take your fancy?
I'm definitely not fussed by the Quantic Dream one because Detroit was an absolute mess. So I don't particularly care for that. I think, the Respawn ones would be good. But what I've always loved about Star Wars is the Jedi and space magic. So in all honesty, the one I'm most looking forward to is the remake of Knights of the Old Republic, because I never got to play that. I didn't own an Xbox back in the day. I have it on Steam now, and I can't control it. There's a problem with it. Like, the mouse and keyboard doesn't work. The controller doesn't work. I can't play it. So to play a full remake of that, which, as far as I can tell, seems to be Mass Effect but Star Wars, and I'm completely down for that. So to be honest, I'm most excited about that.
I am really keen to play a Star Wars game that doesn't have Luke Skywalker in, and goes quite far. Like, there's just so much at the moment. All of the TV shows in that sort of Mandalorian universe, Book of Boba Fett, the upcoming Ahsoka, and other things, like, they're all about a specific era and a specific group of characters, and that's great. And I enjoy and watch the Clone Wars, and that's great. But there is this whole universe of Star Wars games out there, and Star Wars stories out there to tell. And something I would love to see is the books at the moment are doing a different era called the High Republic, which is hundreds of years before the prequels, and like I would love to see that in a video game. You know, a whole just basically it's a blank slate as much as you can get from Lucasfilm when everything has to tie to canon, but just take it to a different place, a different time period, and stop doing Luke Skywalker. That's what I hope. We've seen enough of that guy. Let him rest. He's earned his little sleep on Tatooine. Spoilers, sorry. Victoria, finally, any particular project you're pumped for? Or is there anything like a Star Wars game that you would like to see?
I am actually quite excited by Eclipse, unlike Ed. I think it looks like it could be. So the trailer that we saw for that at was it the Game Awards last year? Whenever they announced it, it looked like it was really aiming for like a really big cinematic experience. So I'm quite excited by that one still. And hopefully this will be a good chance for them to kind of like step out of the shadows of various other Quantic Dream news that we've had over the years.
Controversies, yes.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to Eclipse. I think it looks like it should be or could be a very like, really gripping cinematic story.
Fingers crossed.
So I'm hopeful.
I tell you what I also don't want is a game set on Tatooine.
Yes, it's the Luke Skywalker thing.
Every story is always on Tatooine at some point. I don't want a desert.
Do you want like what Naboo? That's very lush.
Yeah,
anything else really.
See, I wouldn't want it to be on Coruscant because I'm not like a big fan of all the sort of fast-moving traffic and things.
I feel like after Book of Boba Fett, Tatooine particularly needs a rest.
Yeah, done. Yeah.
I love the fact I was listening to a podcast a while ago and they were talking about the Book of Boba Fett and they were talking about how like in Luke Skywalker in the first trilogy was like it's so boring, like nothing happens here. And then apparently, actually, there's like loads of everything happens here.
Yeah.
There's like these races and like underground crime, and it's just apparently it's a really happening place. Luke just didn't see it. Totally passed him by.
It's almost like it's a cheap, easy place to film that doubles as an alien planet. Just go out.
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't.
Or just film in the same place but call it something different, like in the sequels.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's Jakku.
Yeah.
It's Jakku now. Totally different.
It's clearly the same place.
Yeah, just move that Tusken Raider out of shot. No.
No, it's absolutely a different thing. Going back to Star Wars Eclipse, I think it's meant to be set in the High Republic. Just so you know.
That would be very cool.
So there you go. Another tick in the Eclipse box.
I hope that Quantic Dream turn a corner. We shall see. Yes, cool, awesome. All right, we got to the end and we haven't sung any Star Wars music, but that's fine. We can say that for another time.
Ishrak, Ed, that's your cue. Go. No.
That's beautiful. It doesn't feel like the newscast unless we break into song.
I love the fact that we also had the Phantom Instrument.
Of course.
It makes a change from other Disney songs, and but still being Disney, I suppose it's Disney still owns Star Wars. That seems like a great place to end things. And thank you all for putting up with this far and watching. My name's Tom Phillips. My Twitter handle is Tom Phillips EG. Ed, what are you on Twitter?
I'm at Ed_Knights with an N.
Victoria?
I am a little chop shop gal.
And Ishrak?
It's ISHRXQ_.
Awesome. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll catch you again next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.